And MediShare is proven you can save thousands of dollars a year and actually like it more. Over 1 million Americans are now part of healthcare sharing, and MediShare is the gold standard. It's trusted, it works. It's been helping people save money and have peace of mind now for 30 plus years. It's not some big impersonal thing either. It's a community of people like you helping each other. So yeah, if you're frustrated too, here's your chance to make a refreshing change. You'll notice the difference as soon as you call. They're easy to talk to. You can get a price within 2 minutes. Here is the number. Call 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE-40. 855-SHARE-40.
Europe's effort to build a homegrown sixth-generation fighter jet has collapsed after France and Germany abandoned the aircraft portion of a $116 billion defense project. The setback raises new questions about Europe's push for military independence as NATO allies increase defense spending and seek to strengthen security amid ongoing tensions with Russia. Detectives are investigating after a cross was spotted burning in broad daylight in Grant Park in downtown Chicago. Perry Williams has more.
The incident happened yesterday afternoon near Columbus Drive. This passerby got emotional while reacting to what she saw.
I know that my grandmothers and great-grandmothers and grandfathers have experienced in real time, in real life, in the South. So immediately I just felt sad.
It has not been confirmed yet that the cross burning was racial. No one is in custody.
Today, we're celebrating a beverage that is truly American. Today is National Iced Tea Day.
The drink came about in 1904 at the St. Louis World's Fair when a merchant tossed some ice into hot tea on a scorching hot day, and a new drink was invented. Now 85% of all tea consumed in the U.S. is on the rocks. You can go southern with sweet tea. Long Island iced tea is fun. Don't be fooled, there's no tea in that. You can even take the Nestea Plunge. 0 calories, no fat, and a perk of caffeine. I'm Bree Tennis.
I'm Ron Warner, USA Radio News.
You can help put vets to work by donating your car, truck, or van. Your donation will directly support programs to help vets find jobs or even start their own business. Donate today for fast, free pickup of your vehicle. Call 800-209-4580 for 24-hour response. Call 800-209-4580. That's 800-209-4580.
Dependable Lock Service is your source for replacement car keys, custom safes from Liberty Safe, and so many more lock and key services. With over 30 years of experience in lock and key industry, there's nothing Dependable Lock Service can't do for you. Whether you're looking for duplicate automotive chip keys, rekeying commercial and residential locks, or custom safe building, we've got you covered. Call 603-886-0559. Nashua's Dependable Lock Services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
The sky's not the limit, it's just the beginning. I'm Ed Mullen from Nashua Aerial Advertising. There's no better way to advertise your business and or message than high in the sky. How can you make your advertising budget work for you? By putting your ads up where they'll stand out. The Sky is an uncluttered, impressive venue. You can put your message over a region or location to target your desired demographic. Put your ads where they're needed. We provide coverage over communities through Merrimack Valley, Greater Nashua, Manchester Lowell, and points throughout South Central New Hampshire and North Central Mass. Summertime beaches, sporting events, races, fairs, and festivals are all ready-made for banner telling. For more information, please visit us online at NashuaAerialAdvertising.com. And remember, the sky's not the limit, it's just the beginning.
Tired of wondering where your money really goes? At Mammoth Nation, we built what was missing. The America First Marketplace. Every brand we feature is 100% American owned and operated, rigorously vetted for their values and committed to supporting our Constitution, law enforcement, and the American dream. When you shop with us, your dollar stays in the neighborhood, supporting families, veterans, and charities like Folds of Honor. No more sending your hard-earned money overseas to the companies that don't respect you here. Your dollar reflects your values. Your dollar, your values. Your America. Join Mammoth Nation today and be part of building a patriot economy by going to TruckersUnitedForFreedom.com affiliate page and hit that link. American built, America strong, Mammoth Nation.
The views and opinions of the following show do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
Welcome to the Common Sense Conservatives, a political discussion group about current events and other government-related matters every Wednesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Right here on WSMN 1590 AM, WSMN 95.3 FM, and streaming live on wsmn.live. Making sense of the inverted reality we are subject to every day, the Common Sense Conservatives are here to help bring you back to reality. Now, your hosts, Chris Wyatt, Todd McKinley, and John Gorvin.
All right, I think Todd fell out. I have to bring him back in.
And my camera seems to have fallen off. There we go.
There you go. Hey, guys.
Not that it matters for radio.
Todd, it's your lead, bro.
All right. Hey, folks, welcome back to the Common Sense Conservatives. If it's Wednesday night at 7 to 9 Eastern on WSM at 1590 AM and 95.3 FM, it's the Common Sense Conservatives. A little technical difficulty here tonight. We had the way we connect froze up. And then, of course, a couple back and forth here. We didn't know who had the lead or what was going on. And my thing froze a couple of times here. I don't know what was going on there, but we're back at it. We've got a guest tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Very interesting. We've had him on before, and I'll let John introduce him a little bit more here. But it's Dr. Dan Stock. If you want to introduce our guest, John, we'll get right into it right away.
Oh, well, absolutely. Well, Dr. Dan Stock is well known for his activities in 2021 when he stood up to the Board of Education in Indiana regarding certain what's the word I use here for what happened in 2021, Chris? We don't violate YouTube medical concerns.
You can talk about the COVID scam, that's for sure.
Well, we don't want to trigger any YouTube, but anyway, the point is he stood up against the board. He made his points known, and the funny thing is he took a lot of criticisms for doing so. And the what makes it funny is the fact that he is an immunologist, and he's being criticized by people who are not telling him he's wrong. But he later on decided that he was going to do something about such wrongful activities and started an organization called Citizens Coalition for Legislature Accountability. Dr. Dan Stock, how you doing, sir?
Good. How are you guys doing today?
Good, Doctor.
Fair to middling.
Still on the right side of the grass, I hope.
Yeah, it's always good to be topside, isn't it?
You have to remember, if you're not on the right side of the grass, you're only qualified to vote in California and New York.
Chicago. Don't forget Chicago. Yes. Hang on a second, guys. I'm digging out a box of ballots here right now for California. Yeah.
So did I do you any justice when I kind of laid that out there, Dan? Did I hit all the points?
I would correct everybody, say I am not a board certified practicing immunologist who does nothing but immunology. I do immunology all day long in my practice, but I don't have any credentials from anybody else who says I know anything about immunology. So
okay.
But let's not get too wrapped around the axle. Dr. Jordan Peterson was a credentialed medical practitioner, and they stripped him because of his free speech being censored. But hey, that's a whole other story.
Yeah, I always tell people, everybody says, gee, are you a medical doctor? I said, yeah, but think about how much that means. Anthony Fauci and I have the same credentials.
Ouch. Okay, well, you've just lost all credibility on air.
I think people want to reduce scientific method to a competition of credentials. And I say, you really can't determine reality very well that way.
No, that's, the thing is some people are just amazed by shiny toys. Ooh, you went to Harvard. Yeah. What does that mean? I got all D's, but I passed.
Yeah. Or mommy and daddy paid a lot of money to get me past the selection committee.
We put some of those people in jail now. Ask a couple actresses.
I must say, just for clarity, Chris Wyatt is not declaring that he got all D's while being educated.
Oh, no. I graduated cum laude, summa cum laude, my programs. Yeah, no doubt. Now, when I went to college at 17, I got mostly D's and C's, but then I wasn't going to class. But that's a whole other story.
Those desks get comfortable when you're sleeping on them, don't they?
No, I didn't quite make it back to the classroom.
Oh, crap.
Anyway.
So, Dan, you created the Citizens Coalition for Legislature Accountability, which can be ironically, or I don't know about ironically, but you named it or you web address. The web address is fixmylegislature.com. I assume that's because the acronym was kind of hard to get around when you were trying to pick a web address for it. But what prompted this exactly? I mean, I gave a little bit of I glossed over it a little bit, but what prompted this with you?
Well, I can tell people that I've actually been lobbying the Indiana State Legislature since 2015. I tell people I'm the good kind of lobbyist. I come with information and the debate, but I don't bring any campaign cash. And in 2015, I was working on behalf of an organization trying to get a convention of states to get balanced budget and restrict the power of the federal government amendments. And Indiana passed that resolution, so everything went our way. And it's like, oh, okay, the legislature works. Then COVID hit, and I realized that, wait a minute, every single principle of basic biology is just being completely ignored and perverted here. And when we tried to get that legislation through to stop that problem, to get our out of control governor who was trying to put emergency things and telling liquor stores they could stay open, but churches couldn't, the legislature malfunctioned terribly. And it didn't at all do what we wanted it to do. And for those people who don't know what I do in my practice, I'm a functional family medicine physician, which means I try and get people cured. And since most of the time when you have an organ in the body not working right, the reason it's not working right is the brain is telling it to work wrong. So neurobiology is kind of something you get good at. I do everything from depression, anxiety, autism, all of these things in my practice. So I get pretty good at, reading facial expressions and body language. And when I was talking to those legislators over COVID, it took me a while to realize it, but what they're giving me is they're scared. What are they scared of? Because I could tell that they're not reacting like they're scared of COVID. And it took me some time talking with them and the people who work with them. And then a couple of them who would actually get into closed doors and, hey, you're not on the record, right? And what they were afraid of was lobbyists. And that's when I realized that we misunderstand how legislators work as people. We've been looking at this from the angle of, are they good or bad people? Are they, cowards or not? It's usually more complicated, and began to realize, oh, I see what's going on here. There's two things that scare your legislature, and he's usually, especially at the state level, when he's a part-time legislator, he's actually got his heart in the right place most of the time, at least when he first goes into the legislature. He really wants to represent his constituents. He wants to live in reality. He's not psychotic. But he's got two big things that he and his colleagues are afraid of. The first one's election integrity, because they know that somebody's out there. If there's computerized voting, it's manipulatable. And if you show up on the radar of the guy who can manipulate it, he's going to go against you.
Right.
But probably the biggest one is that somebody's going to pay for somebody to run against me in the primary. It is not fun to run for office, and we should all give our credit to the guys who run for office. Most of them are sincere, at least when they start. They've gone through a lot of ugly to run for that office. To be made to do it again against a useful ignoramus that some lobbyist has gone up to and said, you know what, you're the right guy for this job. We want to give you a mint of money to go run for office. This is terrifying to them. And so when a law gets filed or an issue comes up, that the way the legislature is supposed to work is that we're going to debate the pros and cons of all the different options for solving this. We're going to vote and come up with the right solution to all our people. But when that instead comes up with a solution that the guys with campaign cash don't want, but the constituents do, you now have a legislator who is conflicted. And that's scary. And I can tell you what most animals do when they're scared is their first instinct is to hide.
Right.
And if they can hide because the rules of the legislature allow them to do that, they will make sure the bill that would make them show whether they signed on with the lobbyist or signed on with the constituents comes up. They will do everything they can to keep it from coming up for a vote so they don't have to put their name on it. They're not doing this with mustache twirling, hey, I know I can sucker my constituents. They're like any other animal who's scared, and you give them an opportunity to do this, they've got this really big problem. They know that every lobbyist knows legislative procedure inside and out. This is what they do to beat up on legislators, all right? They know their constituents don't know how that works, which means they can't hide from a lobbyist, but they can hide from their constituents. These rules give them the ability to, and those say they want to hide. So realizing that, I was like, you know what? How these rules work, let's do a deep dive in this, because I'm a functional family medicine doctor, so I study boring stuff for a living, right? So why not go study legislative procedure? That's not most people want to do on their Saturday night party routine, right? And as you read it over, it was very clear that these rules that had evolved back in the 16 and 1700s, when nobody tried to escape a debate, that was what you did back then, allowed them a way to get out of it because these rules were antiquated and designed for a time before campaign cash. And that if we changed these rules, they wouldn't be able to hide from their constituents. And that wasn't a bad thing for the legislator. That was actually a good thing, because now he could actually do what he wanted to do. He could raise his finger to the lobbyists and say, you know what? They know what I'm doing now. They can track it. You can't hurt me. They can find out I did it right. They can support me. And so I don't have to take your campaign cash and be worried about you anymore. And that was going to lead to finally fixing the logjam, that we could get this important legislation we need passed to get through. And that's why I came up with the idea of, hey, we need to first of all educate the constituency. This is how it works. Your guy's not going home rich. Everybody thinks their legislator gets rich. There's a few Nancy Pelosi's who are doing that. All right. Happens a lot more at the federal level. But at the state level, most of your representatives and senators aren't getting rich. They run scared. They don't get carrots. They get sticks. And that we can fix their problem like we would fix any problem with any frightened animal, by solving the situation so that, hey, you're frightened of the right thing. That's us. And then you'll learn to respect us. And then you'll learn that we respect you. And that's where the rules changes of the CCLA came from.
Absolutely.
So what you're saying is that most legislatures on state level don't get a whole lot of interaction from their constituents?
You know, they don't get a lot, but I think what's even more important is they may have constituents who come in and say, hey, I want this. But what they don't have is a constituent comes in and say, I know why I haven't been getting it. They have a lot of people who come in and foam at the mouth in front of them. You dirty bastard, you didn't put that vote, you said you were going to do blah, blah, blah. And they don't understand, dude, do you understand what happens when I go into caucus? I got my colleague in here who's in a purple district. He is running scared from lobbyists. And they all say to me, we're not going to let your bill come up for a vote, dude, because that will cost us campaign cash. And we got to have that stuff. And we don't want them putting somebody else against us. And because this constituent doesn't walk a mile in the shoes of the legislator knows he can't support him because he doesn't know what to do. That's why we work so hard on educating constituents on the idea, look, the first thing you have to do here is make sure your legislator knows you do know what's going on, because that's the information he needs to stand up against the lobbyists. And so it's not that they aren't having interactions. It's that they're having interactions, and what they learn from those interactions is my constituency doesn't know how to help me. And so what we need is constituents who understand, okay, I get it now. You're not getting rich. You're not a horrible, nasty person. You have a wife and kids and you work right. You're just in a really bad system. Well, let me tell you how to change that system. And now you know I've got your back when you change that system. And that's the message that we needed them to have. That's why the local legislator is doing such a bad job, because he thinks his constituents don't know how to help him.
That's an important aspect. People need to realize. That's part of why we want to have you on the show, is because hopefully folks listening will get an idea of, well, you're saying the right things here. And I think some people need to hear it. And,
as a matter of fact, I was just last week, just a week ago, I was doing a lecture for a group here in Indiana who's getting ready to join our coalition, I might add. And I told them, look, I showed them the slides. I said, here's the rules of what you do when you go in with your legislator. You start off with an apology. And what you apologize for is being disinterested and unengaged about how his job worked. Start off with that. Not because it's good psychology, just because of that, but also because it's true. All right? Mm-hmm. And then tell him, look, I'm sorry that we've had your job description so twisted for this long a time, and I've been an unengaged employer. But I'm going to be an engaged employer from now on. I need to change your job description. I think this is going to be better for both of us if we do this. And I've got your back if you do it right. My second choice thing is to replace you because you can't accept the new job. All right? And with that attitude towards him, it actually solves the legislator's biggest problem, which is that he thinks his people don't have the ability to support him because they don't know what's going on. And that was the whole idea of CCLA was, hey, look, we're educating constituents and legislators at the same time why this system is broken. And I think it's important for people to know most legislators have never thought about the rules as being a problem. People need to kind of know how a legislator learns these rules because, they don't usually know them when they go into the legislature. But after you get elected, you go into something called orientation day. And orientation day is when they teach you how the legislature works. First of all, you learn the rules. And then second of all, you learn how to hobnob and do all that backroom dealing that's going to be good. And you get schooled in this way of doing it. It's the only way you've ever known. And so you don't understand how to change it because you've never thought about it. This is what you learn to do. The example I use for people, look, my dog can outrun me, but she'll come running up to me to let me put the leash on her collar to take her for a walk because she never gets to go for a walk without her leash on. And this is what you're dealing with when you're talking with the legislator. They've been taught this way of doing it. These were rules that evolved, 300-400 years ago. At a time when campaign cash and computer elections didn't exist. And they haven't really thought about this. This is the way they've been schooled to doing it. So we're teaching both the constituents and the legislators at the same time that, look, for representative government to work, your eye has got to be on your constituents and not on that lobbyist. And here's some changes that'll make that possible.
Yeah, I got a bad taste for the lobbyists when I ran for the state legislature because you've got to go kiss the ring, so to speak. Well, to me, I wasn't looking at kissing the ring. I was looking at people that are interested to hear what I had to say because I wasn't taking campaign donations. I refused donations and spent only my own money, $23,000 to run for the office, an office that historically the Republican running the race only spent $10,000 to $20,000 on total. But 5 of us ran, and it was close to $400,000 was wasted on that race. And what I discovered from these lobbyists is that while they have nice glitzy websites that propose that they're for this position or that position, that's not what it's about. I'm going to sum up what you just said in my view. It's about who's the most useful idiot that we can get in office. Because when they asked me my thoughts on how much money I was going to spend on the campaign, I said, well, given that there's 5 candidates, it's a primary, it's only 7 weeks away because it was just moved up. I'm estimating I'll spend between $5,000 and $10,000. And they almost laughed at me. This one group of lobbyists who say they're for small government. And I said, well, I didn't say why you're laughing, but I said, what is it? And they said, well, that's a very unrealistic expectation. You're going to need to put more of your own money into this than that. So they were just concerned how much my own money went. And the irony is the person who won the race, who got the $100,000 of money from these lobbyists, put none of his own money into the race. And that's who they backed because he was a useful idiot. And the other irony of this whole thing is that they asked me, they said, why are you going to spend so little? I said, well, because I've looked at the race, and historically for a primary for Republicans, no more than, I forget the number I said at the time. I said no more than about 10,000, 12,000 people show up for the primary, even though there's 40,000, 30,000 district. I said, I would expect that for this primary, there might be more interest. And in order to win the race, you probably need between 4,200 and 4,600 votes. And with 5 candidates splitting the vote, that means you need fewer votes. So I'll be able to focus my effort. Well, they laughed at me. They actually openly laughed at me right there because they're idiots and don't know what analysis is. The person who won the race had 3,800 votes. The vote was split. He won by 300 votes. It was 3,800, and then 3,500, and then 2,600, and then 1,000 and 600. And it just showed me how little they care about democracy and representative government. All they care about is advancing their agendas, and they want a useful idiot. And they've gotten themselves a useful idiot for the last 2 years who has done nothing whatsoever in the state legislature. If it wasn't for the fact that he's on the ballot to get reelected this year, we wouldn't even know he's running.
It's your point is very well taken. And even a very good legislator who really wants to get things done knows that these guys can find a useful ignoramus. And I tell people I prefer the term useful ignoramus because they actually get these guys and give them the idea that, hey, we're going to help you get into power and you're going to do great things. And what this ignoramus sees is the shiny thing of I'm going to be able to do good things. He doesn't realize, no, once you get in there, dude, we're going to have you so stuck in Stockholm syndrome that you can't even think about anything but what we want you to do. But you're not wise enough to see that we're going to do that to you. And we selected you because you're so good at ignoring reality that you'll fall for it. And, I have seen this happen more than once where you get somebody who's like, you know what, you are not the sharpest tool in the shed. I can't believe you're in my legislature. But I know how you got here. You're just gullible enough and just, power mad enough that they can recognize you and they can smell you guys like a mile away, and they'll go give you campaign cash, and that'll get you addicted to them. And you don't even see that happening. So, Chris, you're quite right. Your experience is exactly the thing we want to break. And we have to break it starting at the grassroots level. In fact, one of the things we just had one of our supporters, the CCLA here, took on an incumbent who outspent her. I'm going to estimate 15-1. All right. It was just crazy, and beat her by 6 percentage points. This is a grassroots effort that almost took down an incumbent, very wealthy incumbent, I might add, and almost took him down for very little money.
6 points is a very poor return on investment for him.
Yeah, that's right. That was the whole goal. What you would have loved to seen is every other legislator look around and say, wait a minute, he only won by 6 points and it's been how much? That's the best example I love is Mr. Trump in 2024. What he got spent 2-1 by the Democrats and got their hiney handed to him. It's like, guys, look, grassroots start getting mobilized here, and this propaganda isn't working like it used to. You could run an ad on ABC and everybody says, oh, it's on ABC, it must be real. And now everybody's like, yeah, ABC's full of crap. We don't listen to that. This is the best time in the world for us to be trying to fix our legislatures, because people are realizing that campaign cash that buys that glitzy ad, that's like telling me so-and-so has MD behind their name. Doesn't really mean they're a good doctor, all right? And the grassroots then says, well, have you heard about Joe? Joe doesn't got a lot of campaign cash, but hey, he supported CCLA. Oh, really? Yeah, he wants to reform the legislature to reduce lobbying. Oh, okay. And all of a sudden, through the grassroots, it can work. And then you've got the guys running for office having the confidence to look, as you did, Chris, at that lobbyist and say, no, I don't need your money. I can make this work through the grassroots, because I'm going to be able to show the grassroots when I got in everything I did on their behalf. And it'll be documented that I did it on their behalf. And then you can come out and try and tell them that, I kicked my dog and forked the cat and all of those things. But I think they're going to see I voted the right way and that I didn't run from a debate. I got in there and I voted against you lobbyists. And that's probably going to work for me in this election.
The irony with all this, Dan, is that, I guess maybe it's just those who follow politics and maybe politicos, or so to speak. I don't know what the term is. I'm a political scientist, so that's why I follow. But the irony is this: we've known about K Street lobbyists in D.C. for 30 years. I mean, it's been a topic we've talked about in circles, but it hasn't caught on and resonated with the average Joe or Jane on the street. And I think the point you're getting at now is it is catching on that this is just a bunch of nonsense. These people they're cancerous to our society because they're only advancing their interests and they dress themselves up. I see increase my representative. And if I was going to run again, that's the seat I want to run for. But Scott has no inclination to leave office anytime soon. So, but that seat, they're running ads and Scott Perry voted every time with Trump. And most people are like, yeah, okay, I like that. And the other thing is they think that's going to defeat him. Then they're like, and he voted to raise tax. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. This guy has a conservative score that's so high up in the air it makes us, gives us light. There's almost no oxygen up there. He raised taxes. What did he raise taxes on? In the past, people just would have bought that, but now they're going, wait a second. Okay, was it part of a bill in which this rider was stuck in there and did it raise our dog license? I mean, people are asking those questions now, which 10 years ago they weren't asking. I think the COVID scam finally woke a lot of people's eyes up after the fact. It took a while, but after the fact. But so Dan, the audience doesn't know. Offline, I was chatting with Dan, and I think I thought I was asking to self-censor. I wasn't, but I paid a heavy price for being a truth teller and telling the facts for someone that understands epidemiology, and YouTube destroyed my business because of that. And I want some of that 1.8 billion if that fund comes back.
Yeah. Well, I think the nice thing about all tyrants, tyrants live in psychosis. In fact, I used people discuss the term the psychosis of tyranny, which is me little by myself is powerful enough to overcome all these people. And eventually they get so psychotic, I can sell them heat and tell them it's cold. They really get to that. And once they've practiced being that way bad enough, they'll come out with some ad that says, Chris is a woman. and everybody can look at him and say, I don't think that's a woman. And now the next time they come out with their next ad, it's like, oh, you're going to make an ad? No, you're full of it. I know you're nonsense. I learned to ignore you.
That's where we're at.
CNN is like, CNN's been letting go of people, and they're losing ad shares. You're like, look, nobody's watching you anymore. I read that the Los Angeles Times newspaper actually went bankrupt because we're like, no, we're not buying in this. Propaganda's not working because COVID kind of told them, wait a minute, they overstepped badly. They said, we're going to tell the lie that black is white. And everybody went, wait a minute, what? But you got to understand, when you're a tyrant, you've been doing this so long, you don't realize you can't sell black as white. And so they drubbed their ding, and the next thing you know, everybody's realizing, okay, that's it. The system doesn't work. Nobody trusts our healthcare system anymore, and they shouldn't. Right now, it used to be that everybody said, I hate Congress, but my congressman's good. Now it's become, I hate Congress, and hey, what are you like? All right, are you part of that problem? It's becoming more inquisitive into the, don't just give me the fluff. And especially if we show them, hey, this is how the fluff has been made in the past. All right. They're like, okay, I don't want any more fluff. I want to change the system so we don't have fluff. I don't want your fluff. I want to, right now, in fact, I can tell you the kind of success we're having here in Indiana. In 2024, I think we had 4 candidates running for office who endorsed the CCLA. In 2026, we had, through the entire thing so far, we've had 14. Back in 2024, if I sent a note to an incumbent and said, hey, somebody in your race has endorsed us, we want to talk with you about that, I would get back more crickets than a Bill Gates food factory. This year, I have an establishment candidate that I spoke with earlier today who is getting ready to draft a letter of some degree of support for CCLA. I have an incumbent senator who put it in writing that he supported the majority of our proposals.
Wow.
All right, put it in writing, okay? So, by the way, one of our CCLA supporters beat his incumbent Republican senator in a heavily Republican district.
It's possible. You're showing that it's possible. But then I would argue along with that, I want to get your thoughts on this, because during the COVID scam, they actually successfully frightened tens, hundreds of millions of people into being sheep. Completely ignoring the science about how you respond to an epidemic or a pandemic in which you isolate the vulnerable, you quarantine the infected, and the herd goes about its business developing herd immunity. That's we've known that forever, but they completely ignored that. They to the point where people would call up the cops if you were walking down the street not wearing a mask at one point. Remember that nonsense? Mm-hmm. All of these people who are complicit, everyday citizens in this scam, either have regrets now or are ashamed of it, and they're all hiding. And many of them have become enthusiastic supporters of calling out everyone else, which I think is fascinating, because I can point to these people who acted like lunatics, like, it's like, she's a witch. No, I'm not. Yeah, she is. Look at her nose. They put the nose on me. No, they didn't. Yeah, well, we did the nose. Okay. Monty Python. I mean, it's almost like we were watching a Monty Python movie, except the consequences were tragic. All these people who supported Tom Wolf and Murphy and Governor, Grope-a-lot there in New York, putting COVID positive patients into our nursing homes and murdering tens of thousands of our grandparents, our septuagenarians, octogenarians, nultogenarians, all of these people who are complicit in that, average everyday citizens, forgotten their role in it. And many of them are very enthusiastically now questioning the system. I don't want to give them a free pass, but I just want to say it's ironic, and I think a lot of that is what's playing into this too. Do you think, does that have any merit, that position?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely true, and I can tell people when it started to fall apart. It was when the first shot went in and somebody died the next day. All of a sudden, it's like, wait a minute, that was supposed to be safe and effective and make this all good, and then my buddy got a shot 2 weeks ago and he's got COVID. He just got a shot 2 weeks ago.
Well, but no, if you get the shot, then you it's not going to be as severe. Okay, I want you to know it's going to be less severe. Okay.
Yeah. So if you don't die, you'll be less severe.
Well, yeah, I guess not dying is less severe than dying, but
that's the way they coach it with you. If you don't die, it'll be less severe.
Remember all the medical professionals and nurses dancing in hospitals and all this stupid. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So
Well,
sick.
and you have to understand, this is the mistake that every tyrant makes. You know, Hitler thought he could snowball everybody forever. When the bombs started falling on Berlin, it was kind of hard to buy the "we're invincible Germans."
We're winning on the Eastern Front, and there's Russians outside.
Yeah. I mean, you have to understand that's the psychosis that happens to a tyrant.
Yeah.
And pretty soon he ignores the idea of, wait a minute, I'm going to get them all to take these shots, and they're going to buy it. It's like, what are you going to do when the first one strokes out?
Well, you know, the East Germans didn't see it coming. They didn't see it coming. They were the architects of their own demise, and they didn't see it coming. And they made one mistake, and then within a matter of weeks and months, the whole thing collapsed. The wall came down. South Africa's government is on the verge of that right now. They've ignored their population for so long that black South Africans want to get tar and feathers and string them all up. It's amazing. I think the point you're making is that these people believe their own press. That's what they do. That's a phrase I've always used. I said that about for a long time about some prima donnas who believe that they're actually more important than someone else. But I mean, unless it's a C-section, we all come out of the womb the same way, you know, and we're all leaving this earth at some point. We have no control over that, and nobody's better than anybody else. It's how you apply yourself and what you do in life. But these people believe their own press, and they think they're invulnerable. They think they're untouchable, and pride comes before the fall.
You know, I always tell people to take a moment to have compassion for the tyrant. I tell them, wait, what? Yeah, I know. That's the face you give me. You say that. Like, guys, well, stop and think about it. In 1933, if the governments of Europe would have gone to him and said, "You build that damn military, and we'll run through you like shit through a goose," all right? Had they stood up to him, Adolf Hitler wouldn't have been swallowing a bullet in cyanide in 1945. And so we have a tendency to let this psychosis get out of control until it's got millions of people killed, instead of saying, look, it's not compassionate for us to let you live in that la-la land that you have power. It's cowardly that we let you live in that la-la land that you have power. We outnumber you. We're not ignorant like you are. And we're going to knock your shit around eventually. Excuse my language. Because we're going to knock you around eventually, we're going to do you a favor and box your ears right now. And if we do that with these guys, it's, you know, like I say, I always tell people, go to your legislator first and try and get him on your side. Apologize, make sure he understands it. But then make sure he understands there's a stick if you don't take the carrot. And you're not threatening that stick because you hate him. You're doing that stick because, look, when this thing finally comes down, we don't want to have your neck in the noose. So we're going to try and teach about how bad this is. Because we want you to change. And if you don't, we want you to get out before we have to kill you. All right? That's the way we would like this to go. Have a little compassion for your tyrant, because remember, there's a component that helped him become tyrannical. And that was you being willing to ignore the fact he was being tyrannical.
Well, so, Dan, I think part of the problem with so many people in so many places is they just don't see the tyranny encroaching on their daily lives. You know, one day we're nice, the next day we elect this lunatic who wants to fundamentally change America, and does so, and destroys race relations in this country. And here we are almost 20 years later on a path that we're just now starting to come back from. And we're not alone. I mean, look at the UK. The UK is gone. People are up in arms. The streets of Belfast are on fire. In Ireland, you know, the Irish are only 70% of the population now. And all these benefits given to people who shouldn't even be there, false asylum seekers, economic migrants who have no desire to integrate and assimilate in society. They're not Irish yet. They run around and proudly proclaim they have Irish passports so they don't get body cavity searches going through airports. It happens so slowly. You know, there's an analogy that Cyril Ramaphosa, the leader in South Africa, talked about years ago when he was negotiating the end of apartheid, the transition to a multiracial government. And he said, you know, he told people private, but it was recorded. He said, you know, what we'll do, it's like a frog in a pot. We'll just turn up the heat slowly, and the frog won't know they're boiling until it's too late. And that's the stage I think we got at in society. And look at California. People think it's perfectly sane to have everyone compete in a jungle primary. I mean, the purpose of primary is for a political party to select its candidate, not for the state to pick who's going to run in November for, you know, a check the block election. I mean, the whole thing is asinine, to say the very least. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I try to explain to my foreign audience, because I have a large audience, that they don't understand caucuses and primaries. And I said, well, the caucus is run by the political party. They handle everything. They pay for it all. They vote locally. They get the results. And you get the results in one night. Look at Iowa. Small state is taken care of. Primaries are what the taxpayer does as a kindness for the political party to help them select their candidate for the November election. And when I explain it that way, they get it. But look at California. People just like, I can't believe that they think this is a good system. And it almost backfired on them until Trump endorsed Steve Hilton, and then Chad Bianco fell down it. But they were the top 2 candidates before that. But my point here is that we got a lot of frogs in the pot, and they don't realize that the water temperature is rising almost until it's too late. And that's where we're at. It's too late in the UK. Maybe it can be turned back. It's too late in Ireland. It's too late in Germany. It's not too late in America. And with Trump here, we're lowering the temperature finally.
I think your point about the idea that I always tell people when people say, hey, do you really think this kind of psychological conspiracy is going on? I tell them, guys, look, it's not only going on, these guys are good at it. They make Joseph Goebbels look like a rank amateur, all right? They knew that the way you do this is you don't scare them all at once. You get them ready. A couple movies about viruses and get
bird flu. Yeah. H1N1.
Yeah, get it all built up here, and then we'll drop the bomb. Now, they miscalculated because, like I say, they're ignorant. They're psychotic, all right? But they had this idea that you don't go do it all at once. Shock and awe will make them realize you're trying to shock and awe them. But, the problem is that assumes that the manipulative psychotic is so much smarter than the people that he's manipulating that he can pull it off forever. And unlike the frog in the pot, human beings have a lot better processors. All right. And after a while, we do get smart as to, wait a minute, Granny just died after she took that shot. And Billy Bob next door, who wouldn't wear a mask no matter what I said, he's never had COVID. Wait a minute. And after a while, the other thing that they don't calculate on is using fear as a weapon doesn't work forever, because if you frighten them of an event that never occurs, then they eventually stop being frightened of it. And you can't amp it up anymore.
No, you can't cry wolf forever.
That's right. And so it's like eventually they come back to the reality that, no, that didn't happen right. Especially when you do something like scare them with something worse, like the shot, they begin to realize, wait a minute, I've been deceived. And then they recognize, oh, you're doing that manipulation thing. So we're a little different than frogs in the pot. I tell somebody, I think in the end, we're going to find that all tyrannies fall apart. The question is going to be how many buildings burn and how many people die.
Yeah, how many people suffer in order to get to that place? That's
right.
That's the challenge. And that's the sad part about it. And that's, for some countries, that's a path they're going to go down. That's where people are going to die and bad things are going to happen. It's unfortunate, but
or they'll be bankrupt. I mean,
or that. Yeah. Well, we're headed towards insolvency ourselves. We can only print money for so long. $38 trillion, $40 trillion in debt, which is double what it was a decade. It's insane.
Yeah, but I tell somebody, think about this. We're not nearly as tyrannically organized in our government as, say, the Chinese Communist Party is. The Chinese Communist Party has an even lower birth rate than we do. Their standard of living is damn near squalor.
The poverty, they have hundreds of millions of people, but 700 million people still living in abject poverty. You go 50 miles from the coast, the country's a disaster. They have cities where there's nobody even lives there because they built it to build resources. Yeah, no, China is not the dream that people make it out to be. Yeah. They need on average 6 to 10% GDP growth per year for the next 40 years just to catch up with us. And people say, wait a second, but they have 16 trillion in economy. You have 34 trillion. They're going to catch up. Yeah, the same standard of living, the same per capita GDP. It'll take them that long. They're not going to get there.
People also remember their country is polluted beyond belief right now. So I tell somebody, at the end of the day, when you look at it, the United States still has the most favorable situation going on in the world right now. And, that's kind of the thing we want to do with the CCLA is to say, hey, look, concentrated power is bad for every human. It's bad for the guy who has the power because it makes him get psychotic. Bad for the people he gets power over because he does psychotic things to them. Decentralizing the power, which is basically what we're doing in the CCLA and a legislature. We don't want you to right now, effectively, you vote for a senator and a representative, you give him the power to make laws on your behalf. He walks in, votes for these rules, and gives away all the power. And he wants to give it away because that way you can hide behind the guy he gave the power to. He doesn't know it's what he's doing most of the time, but that's what he's doing. Our goal is, no, decentralize the power. Don't give that power to the Speaker of the House, the President Pro Tem. Don't give it to the committee chairman. We want you to keep that power. And now you don't become psychotic. He doesn't become psychotic. And the other psychotic guy who wants to beat the two of you up, he doesn't win anymore. And the United States, if you could say anything about the United States Constitution, the separation of powers is one of these ideas that occurs has occurred nowhere else in the world. I mean, this is the brilliance of 1787 is that I always tell people I'm amazed that people who knew nothing about neurobiology did this good a job.
No, we were unbelievably blessed at the right time, the right place, with a collection of minds. Today on a broadcast I was doing with someone in South Africa, someone was being snarky and came out and said, yeah, because I did the preamble for the Declaration of Independence because we're approaching that day. And it came back in the chat and they're like, well, yeah, but it was a bunch of white men. They did it for white men. No. Read the Federalist Papers. It wasn't for white men. They had the ideal. They knew that they weren't there, but they knew where they were going with this. That was ultimately the plan. It's so frustrating for me. But I got to say, Dan, you've got a lot more confidence in human beings than I do. I mean, frankly, if the Chinese were giving me a social credit score, I'd have 0 because I don't comply. And there are no sheep in my circle. And I'm telling you that I'm not convinced. I think there's a lot of frogs in the pot still. And people just are completely ignorant and blissfully unaware of what's going on around them. But enough people are awake and paying attention as opposed to awake.
I tell people, look, I'm not Pollyanna. I recognize the fight's not done yet. After all, we've had more candidates respond to us this year than ever before. But I can tell you the Democrat candidate for Secretary of State still hasn't responded. I've got 2 different candidates for the Republican Secretary of State who have responded to CCLA. All right. One of them's endorsed it entirely. The other one's going to decide how much he's going to endorse. But he's already told me, hey, I agree with some of it at least. But the Democrat, no. Multiple contacts, said nothing. The incumbent Republican told me 3 times he's going to meet with me, never said anything. So I don't live Pollyanna. We got work to do here, but it's starting to make the changes we need to have happen. And remember, we're not frogs. We got a little bit more processor than the poor frog does.
But Dan, what you're doing though is, I don't want to say it's God's work, but it's certainly work that citizens need to see. We need to have people who try to hold our government accountable for its actions. Inside government, especially at the federal level, people are so accustomed to abrogating the responsibility and leaving it to someone else. Congress has basically given away its legal responsibility as one of those separation of the separation of powers by allowing organizations like the Environmental Protection Agency to determine basically what laws are by policy. I mean, that's an abrogation of their responsibility. And then, of course, famously, in the first time around in the fake Russia collusion hoax, Jeff Sessions recused himself, and it just so he wouldn't be. I can't blame me. I'm not involved. His job as Attorney General was to make sure that anyway. So holding politicians accountable, I think, is amazing. A lot of people always think it's about Nancy Pelosi's visa deal and corruption. That's part of it, but you're trying to hold them accountable legislatively to do their jobs as well, correct?
Yes, and I tell somebody, and this is not a cruel thing you're doing to them. Because, guys, if you let them get psychotic enough, they're either going to be drinking cyanide and shooting themselves, or we're going to be shooting them. All right? You're being compassionate with the legislator when you say, look, I'm your job. All right? I need your eyes on me, not that lobbyist. I understand. I put you in this situation. I let him run roughshod over you before. I got that. I apologize. But right now, dude, the new job description is you pay attention to me. All right, your eyes are on me. You're running from me, and I'm running with you. All right, that we're doing this. That's the new job description. If you can't accept that, then get out. But it's not mean that I'm doing this to you, because I don't want to hang you 10 years from now. All right, this is why we're doing this. I don't want your kid, because I was actually talking back in 2024 with somebody who kind of gave the, this is how we're going to do things, and this will get people taken care of. I was like, when these tyrants have enough power, do you think they're going to remember you're the one who gave it to them? Or do you think they're going to eat, or you think they're going to eat you for dinner too? Remember, they're getting more psychotic every day, dude. Yeah. That guy are going to, you haven't thought about that yet. After all, what did Hitler do with the SA after he was done with them?
Oh,
he had the SS kill them all.
Pretty nasty night for Ernst Röhm and everyone else. Right. No, and that's the thing. You look at this as their circle gets smaller and smaller. They go after one target group. They went after the Jews. They went after the communists. They went after the homosexuals. Went after mixed race Germans. Then it was the aristocracy, which had been in power for centuries. And then it was the Catholics. But then they came for the Protestants too. Before you know it, it's like what's his name? The German pastor said, I didn't say anything when they came for the communists. I didn't say anything when they came for the socialists. And so on and so on. Eventually, they came for me. There was no one there to protect me, and that's kind of where. But you got to admit, Dan. I mean, in a perverse way, you got to admit, sometimes not holding these people accountable has unintentional comedic relief. I mean, I can't sit here and watch enough times of Joe Biden stumbling up the stairs to Air Force One. I mean, you talk about doing a kindness. I mean, a kindness to Joe Biden would have been putting out his misery in 1972, but we tolerated this moron until the 2020s. I mean, come on.
I think if you want comic relief, you can go watch a child learning how to walk, and then you can love them when they learn how to walk.
We were watching a child learn how to walk. His name was Biden.
It's get it from somebody who's learning, laugh, and then enjoy they're getting better. The schadenfreude of watching somebody get worse, like Joe Biden. Biden is like, okay, we'll have a few laughs in private about that, but in public, we should probably not say, wow.
Okay, we feel bad for Joe, not.
I always tell people I have a little bit of empathy for Hitler. All right, that doesn't mean I'm going along with him. As a matter of fact, my empathy for Hitler makes me fight him. All right, that's the same thing I would say to every legislator. Look, I've got empathy for your situation. That doesn't mean I'm going to let you keep doing it.
Fair enough.
That's the message I would have everybody take out here. Because at the end of the day, remember, what does the other side do when you disagree with them? They immediately go to name calling. They don't debate.
Right.
They go to name calling. So I don't want you to go in there and call your legislator names. That just ends up with the same problem again. I want you to go in there and say, look, guys, we understand how it works now. And I understand the way it's been working this way is partially my fault, but I'm not doing it anymore. And name calling, I'm not going to do that. I'll just remove you. I won't call you a name. I'll just remove you. But I'd really rather have you stay here and pat your back and call you a good thing. All right. And that's the difference between me and the tyrant, because the tyrant's not going to do that. And that's how you can get people to understand reality. There's a lot of psychosis in a legislature. I mean, if you can't imagine psychosis, you've seen the video of Nancy Pelosi saying for the Affordable Care Act, you have to pass it to know what's in it. Now, look,
read it after you vote for it.
Think about this, that somebody would say a statement like that on record. Yeah. Does that not indicate they are completely immune to what her own constituents were going to say when they heard that?
Well, what about ripping up the president's speech at a joint session of Congress? I mean, that's a federal violation of law. But so before we run out of time here, Dan, I did want to ask the following, because I think this could be helpful for other folks. Getting the Citizens Coalition for Legislative Accountability going, what was the biggest challenge you faced? I mean, maybe it's I don't think it would have been finding like-minded people. Is it getting your foot in the door to talk to candidates and legislators? What's the biggest challenge people are going to face if they're trying to replicate what you've done in Indiana?
I would tell people what you don't want to do is start off with the big organizations. Most of our organizations are like We the People of Carroll County, or Voice of the Patriots in Richmond, Indiana. If you go to some other group which is busy trying to win the lobbying war, at which there's a lot of health freedom organizations that are like this. I'll not name them publicly, but I can tell you I've spoken with them. They all say, oh, the legislature's broken. Oh, here's how we fix it. No, that'll make them mad at us. Well, dude, they already don't like you. They like the lobbyists who give them campaign cash. Don't go to the big organizations, because the big organizations already think they're going to win this. They think they're going to outspend the lobbyists and win. Or they like having the microphone in front of their face. And they like there being a problem because it gives them, people make donations to them and I get to do things. It makes them feel empowered even when they're not. So don't start there. Instead, start with the smaller local organizations. Get that grassroots thing going. Remember, the major thing is we've got to have people learn how this works. These grassroots organizations are almost all volunteer. They don't have large donations coming to them. And as WAC starts to come about and that starts to make change, then you're going to see bigger organizations actually say, oh, well, I'm kind of becoming unimportant unless I do this. So I can tell you, we've actually had one organization. It was an organization I was a member of. It was the founding organization in the CCLA. The state chapter of that organization unanimously endorsed joining. And then this organization is national, and the national leadership, which, by the way, has concentrated power and is tyrannically designed itself, said, no, we're not going to do that, and completely obliterated their ability to participate. And we even had to basically throw them out of the CCLA for non-participation. All right. So in duplicating this, don't get this grandiose idea that, first of all, you're going to get lots of money and make this work. You're not out going to win this warfare against the lobbyists. They've got more money than you do. That's a losing strategy to begin with. You need volunteers. That means you're going to go to these local freedom groups. We have the Citizens Coalition, the Coalition of Central Indiana Tea Parties here in Indiana. These are the kind of groups, Citizens in Action from Lafayette, Indiana. These are the groups that you're going to go to and say, look, here's a solution, here's why it works. And I will be happy to give people the slides that I use doing lectures here in Indiana. You can see how it applies to your legislator, because while there's a lot of these things happen in every legislature, some of them are a little bit different. Here in Indiana, we don't very often do voice votes on any vote on the bill we don't want to have a vote on. But in many legislatures, they actually pull it off by having voice votes. That's one of the changes we want to make in legislatures, no voice votes. Every bill passes with a record of who voted how. In fact, for the people of Colorado, you'll love this. There's a video of them approving a law that's basically said the state can consider your failure to support your child's gender transition as child neglect. All right. And so they had this law come up there, and they said all in favor say aye, and there's like aye. All opposed say nay, nay. And then the leader of the chamber goes, the ayes have it. And nobody challenges this. Everybody says, why didn't they challenge it? Because this was all scripted beforehand, guys.
Yeah, it's
right?
theater. It's theater.
And now they all know that they can all go back to their constituents and say, I voted nay. Dirty Speaker of the House did that. But I voted for him to have the power to do it. That's
right.
That's why I tell people, look, understand that that's the way the game is played.
Yep.
If you start off with these local groups, they get this really quick. Oh, because you're talking to a group of 30 people sometimes. As little as 30 people. That's a big group when I'm doing a lecture. But they get it. Okay, I get it. I see how it works. It's common sense. Makes sense. We change the rules. I didn't know that's how it worked. But we'll do it. And next thing you know, these big organizations, they're going to come along because it's like nobody's paying attention to us anymore.
Right. Well, Dr. Stock, we really appreciate you being back here on the Common Sense Conservatives. We're getting played off right now. We'll be back at the top of the hour after this break, folks, with some more commentary and more Common Sense Conservatives. Stick around.
Thanks, guys. Hey, guys, I'm going to go eat.
Broadcasting from 200 Main Street in the beautiful and historic Masonic Building. This is WSMN 1590 AM and WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Streaming live at wsmn.live.
USA Radio News, I'm Anthony Lucero. Tensions are escalating between the U.S. and Iran after overnight Iranian missile strikes targeted American bases in the region.
What CENTCOM has done here has been historic, and the military objectives that they've achieved have reset the table in this region and set the table for the kind of movement through the Strait of Hormuz based on U.S. control that changes the whole game. We know how much pressure Iran is under. It's clear. We see it.
President Trump has ordered a new military action against Iran, while Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says U.S. Central Command will be busy tonight as operations continue. President Trump has signed legislation funding immigration enforcement through the remainder of his term, providing $38 billion for ICE and $26 billion for Border Patrol.
For more than 100 days, congressional Democrats tried to block all funding for the Department of Homeland Security in a reprehensible attempt to throw open the borders of the United States of America.
The bill cleared Congress after weeks of delays and a government shutdown, with Trump saying the measure gives both agencies resources to strengthen border security and public safety. Bill Gates told the House Oversight Committee that Jeffrey Epstein tried to use information about his extramarital affairs to reestablish contact after their relationship ended. Gates says he has no involvement in Epstein's crimes and never visited Epstein's island, Palm Beach home, or New Mexico ranch. The State Department is testing a paid shortcut for U.S. visitor visa interviews beginning July 1st.
The $750 fee is for some foreign tourists and business travelers who need a B1 or B2 visa. It will be on top of the current $185 visa application fee and offered only at certain U.S. embassies and consulates. The agency says the test is aimed at addressing long interview waits and last-minute travel before major U.S. events. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
From America's News Network, USA Radio News.
Maybe this is you too. There's enormous frustration right now with healthcare costs. It is amazing. Healthcare costs for families in the last 20 years have almost tripled, and it just keeps getting worse. All this to say, this is why MediShare is so in demand right now. People are looking for alternatives, and MediShare is proven. You can save thousands of dollars a year and actually like it more. Over 1 million Americans are now part of healthcare sharing, and MediShare is the gold standard. It's trusted, it works. It's been helping people save money and have peace of mind now for 30 plus years. It's not some big impersonal thing either. It's a community of people like you helping each other. So yeah, if you're frustrated too, here's your chance to make a refreshing change. You'll notice the difference as soon as you call. They're easy to talk to. You can get a price within 2 minutes. Here is the number. Call 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE-40. 855-SHARE-40.
Tired of wondering where your money really goes? At Mammoth Nation, we built what was missing. The America First Marketplace. Every brand we feature is 100% American owned and operated, rigorously vetted for their values and committed to supporting our Constitution, law enforcement, and the American dream. When you shop with us, your dollar stays in the neighborhood, supporting families, veterans, and charities like Folds of Honor. No more sending your hard-earned money overseas to the companies that don't respect you here. Your dollar reflects your values. Your dollar, your values. Your America. Join Mammoth Nation today and be part of building a patriot economy by going to TruckersUnitedForFreedom.com affiliate page and hit that link. American built, America strong, Mammoth Nation.
NH.com. I look forward to hearing from you. And remember, health is wealth.
Continuing the legacy started in 1904, Roger Pellerin of Gate City Monument Incorporated continues to provide the same high-quality monument, custom headstone, and stoneworking craftsmanship today that they built their reputation on over 100 years ago, servicing Nashua, New Hampshire, as well as nearby areas in Massachusetts, such as Lowell, Billerica, Chelmsford, and beyond. From creating custom monuments to memorialize, to landscaping and granite work or restorative services, each job is done to your satisfaction and is backed by decades of experience and integrity. If you're thinking about stonework, think Roger Pellerin of Gate City Monument. Visit online at gatecitymonument.com. Stop by and meet Roger at 321 West Hollis Street in Nashua, or call 603-883-7141. That's 603-883-7141. Gate City Monument, memorials of distinction for people who care.
All right. Hey, folks, welcome back to the Common Sense Conservatives right here on WSMN 1590 AM and 95.3 FM. We make sense of the inverted reality and help you bring you back to reality. We are the Common Sense Conservatives live every Wednesday, 7 to 9 Eastern. Of course, Colonel Chris Wyatt, he's not back on the air just yet. Of course, joined by my co-host, Colonel John Grosvenor, and of course, Colonel Chris Wyatt just popping back on there. John, what did you think about the interview there for the first hour? Went by pretty fast, I think.
It did. Dan is excellent at what he does. He's well spoken, and he definitely knows his business. And I thought it was enlightening to hear somebody put it in the perspective he did. And I see Chris related with him really well on it.
Right. Oh, for sure. Yeah, they have an expertise in those sort of things. And of course, that thing went by just like that, pretty quick. Just sitting there listening to him, I was just kind of droning. I'm like, man, I'm hearkening back to all the things that they got away with, during the scamdemic, right? I mean, just kind of reliving all that and kind of remembering all the lies that they told, all the things that they told, the transference of wealth, all the things that happened, the greedy governance, the elections that were stolen that we've seen on a regular basis. And of course, speaking of elections that are stolen, I mean, let's look at Los Angeles and, California, for crying out loud. I mean, you got a guy who was strongly in second place, and then all of a sudden 18,000 votes come in out of nowhere, and not one for him. I mean, come on now. If the pandemic, scandemic, whatever taught us anything, it's governments are emboldened, and they will lie, and they will cheat, and they will steal, and they will do it to you in the broad daylight, right in front of your face.
Deja vu all over again, right?
If I learned anything, it's that, and I just, that interview kind of sparked all that and brought it back. So there we go.
Yeah, it moved rather quick. We at the top of the hour, and I got music playing behind me, and I happened to look over and go, "Oh, crap!"
Yeah,
it's like I was getting into what he was saying.
Oh, for sure.
So you guys became listeners rather than co-host.
I got some in the
floated
beginning,
through.
and then I just kind of fell back and let you guys run with it, and I was enjoying it. I mean,
yeah. Well, there's a lot.
More of a listener.
There's a lot to talk about here, Todd. You want to talk about the elections in California? We're going to need to talk about the fact that we're back at war with Iran. We're going to have to talk about the FIFA debacle that is this embarrassing World Cup. And then finally, I want to talk this hour at some point, if you don't mind, about Social Security. Because isn't it interesting that in 1983, they doubled our rate of taxation, just raising my retirement age from 65 to 67. And now here I am all these decades later, as I predicted in 1983 correctly as a very young man, there'd be no money. And the Social Security Trust Fund is expected not to be able to pay its benefits exactly when I turn, just 3 months before I turn 67. These bastards.
It's a conspiracy, Chris.
Yeah.
They're working against you this whole time.
Well, let's jump into that right away, since you've already prefaced it with that, and just launch into whatever you want to talk about with it. We'll just add in as we go along.
Okay, well, for folks who aren't keeping up with current events, this is something been talked about for a long time. Social Security was on the verge of insolvency in 1982 because of hyperinflation under Jimmy Carter in the 1970s, the oil shocks of 73 and of 79 with the invasion of Afghanistan and the actions of OPEC in 73. So Social Security was at the point where it wasn't going to be able to pay out benefits. There was no money. So what Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, the Democratic Speaker of the House of Representatives, worked out agreement, bipartisan. They doubled our rate of taxation, which was minimal at the time. It was only about 6.25%, and half that was paid out of your checks. You paid 3+% of your check for Social Security, and then you paid your employer paid the other half. Well, they doubled that, so now you're paying 13% of your income to Social Security. The 6.5 or 6.25%, 12.5. The 6.25 your employer pays plus your 6.25. But then on top of that, you have to pay Medicare and Medicaid. So if you're self-employed, you pay 18% of your income for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And that was supposed to create a lockbox, a trust fund where all the money would be for years, which is just nonsense, because all they did is they issued debt. They spent the money. They've been spending that money that's been sitting in there for decades and lying to us. And now we're at a stage where those chickens have come home to roost. And it's shocking how many people are actually on Social Security and how many get Social Security benefits. I mean, it's beyond comprehension just how many. Let me just run through the numbers for you here very quickly. We're already in a situation where the Social Security Administration doesn't take in enough money. 185 million people are paying payroll taxes. And for the self-employed, that's 18% of their income. For those not self-employed, it's essentially 12.5% of their income. Plus, about, I mean, it's because, well, it's still 18%, but part of it's paid by your employer. So for nearly a fifth of our income, 185 million people are paying payroll taxes. They took in 1.449 billion in 2025. 1.323 billion came from payroll taxes. 58 billion came from taxing Social Security benefits, which Trump has just eliminated. So taxing the benefits of retirees who've already paid taxes on income, and then they made 69 billion from interest off of the Federal Reserve. So the benefits they paid out were nearly 200 billion more in the same year, 1.6 trillion. So how many people are getting Social Security? 70 million people out of a country, 330 million people are getting Social Security benefits. 56 million retired workers and their family members. 8 million disabled. We have 8 million people who qualify for disability in this country. I think we need to do some audits right there. I can't believe 8 million people are disabled. And 6 million survivors of deceased workers,
Right.
So we're talking about 70 million people. That's about 1 out of 5, 1 out of 4 people that are getting Social Security in one form or another. That's a pretty frightening figure when you consider that. And here's the deal. They are only going to have 78% of the money that they need to pay out full benefits when I retire. And like I said, in 1982 in the workforce, and when this deal was reached in 83, I said, I'll never see Social Security. I said, I'll never see it. So I have to make a plan on how I'm going to have money when I reach that age, because they've already screwed me. They've taken 2 years away. I have to wait 2 more years to get full benefits because of mismanagement already. And now here we are with their mismanagement and their theft of the money in the fund over the past 40 plus years. And I'm about to reach retirement age and that money won't be there. Now, Todd, this one should scare you too. at some point in the near future, these bastards are going to come for our military retirement and start indexing our military retirement or reducing our benefits and pushing people into poverty, because that is not guaranteed. That's in the operating budget every year, and it's going to be an easy thing to come after. It's not easy from a political standpoint, but they'll try to pass it off and the damage will be done. That is coming. So I made plans as a private to not count on Social Security or count on a military retirement check. To me, I'm entitled to those things. I've earned those things. I've paid into those things. I've sacrificed those things. But if they disappear, I'll still be eating the premium cat food. I can afford to do that.
Right.
As long as it's premium, man. As long as it's premium.
Yeah, that's right. You know, what's the one?
Fancy Feast for Christmas.
Fancy Feast. This isn't too fancy. Ew.
I love
Fancy Feast. That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Right.
That's not fancy at all.
Right. And you got to think about it. Go back to the scamdemic like we talked about, and how and especially in recent years and decades, how they went after veterans, you know, like, oh, they're unhinged, they're this, they're that. They've dehumanized veterans to such a degree so that whenever you do decide they want to come for those benefits, it's going to be a lot easier for them.
Well, and it's not just that. We've talked about this the past couple of years, because the Washington Post article that came out a couple of years ago, in which they tried to test the waters to attack our veterans benefits, saying that, you know, it's not right that your Social Security disability people only get this much money, where these veterans get this much. No, stop. First off, we paid with blood, sweat, and treasure. And this is your responsibility to make us whole again. That's what a VA disability is. You're like, well, but they can work, so they shouldn't be getting this money. Like, what's that guy that's on Fox? I can never remember his name. The hillbilly who's on there, who's missing both his legs. He was
Johnny Joy Jones. Yeah.
Johnny Jones, that guy, the Marine. Yeah. Who's missing both his legs. Yeah. You know, that guy's making $500,000 a year. They want to prorate his VA benefits based on his income. Basically, he wouldn't get anything. I mean, that's ridiculous. The VA benefits aren't to pay him because he can't work. They're to pay him to make him whole again. It can't make him whole again, but it's a small token of what the government is, what we've sacrificed to the government. So, I mean, you know, they completely started this argument, and they try to equate Social Security disability, which people never have to pay a penny into.
Right.
You have people disabled their entire lives. They get Social Security disability payment, never paid a penny into it. Now, I'm not begrudging them that payment. What I'm saying is that you can't equate that with a VA disability payment, because a VA disability payment is not compensating someone because they're incapable of working. It's compensating someone like insurance. If your car gets totaled, you get a payment. If your house burns down, you get a payment. It's intended to make you whole. I know the process isn't pleasant, but neither is a VA pension pleasant either.
It's the best you can do under the circumstances.
Exactly, and that's what it is. And so these people, the leftists, have been trying to already attack veterans with this nonsense. You could see it on January 6th, all the outlandish stories. Oh, look at all these veterans, all these. Yeah, okay, first off, most of the people arrested were in the 60s, 70s who were veterans, who were Vietnam veterans, or, you know, they were all draftees.
Yeah, a number of people that were wearing camo, just wearing camo because it's cheap and it's easy to buy. And if it rips, who cares? You buy another set of camos. Who cares, right?
Yeah, no,
just
but there were
actually.
But there were actually people who were veterans. Who they are. I mean, it was like 67, but a lot of these guys were conscripts back before we went to an all-volunteer force. They were trying to sully the all-volunteer force inactivity. And I said this when the election was the grift of the election in 2020 took place. Remember, after we how do we lose Pennsylvania? He had a freaking 170,000 vote lead, and there's only 1.2 million ballots left. In order for Biden to win this, he has to take like 80% of the ballots, and magically he won by 60,000. That's a swing of 230,000 votes with about 1 million votes left. That doesn't make sense, especially given that 38% of the people who asked for a ballot were registered Republicans. It just doesn't pass muster. But when they did that, I said already, watch, they're going to start coming after veterans, which after January 6th, they came after veterans. And I said that before January 6th. And then I said they're eventually going to come after the active duty and try to sully the image of the active duty. And that's what they've been doing.
What you're talking about was my concern when they started talking about Obamacare. Government wants to manage your health care. Government wants to manage your retirement, but they're inept. They're inadequate. They can't do it.
Well, government manages my health care. It's inept. It's a pain in the butt. And it's the reason why I need a hip replacement, because it's piss poor. You know, if they had addressed the arthritis in my hip years ago when I raised the issue, before it got to the States, and it would have destroyed all the cartilage in my hip just trying to walk. You know, this is what happens. And so, you know, they are inept, and they have no business handling retirement. The only good thing that the government has done for us as American citizens when it comes to retirement in the past 4 decades, in my mind, is the legislation that approved the Roth IRA. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's independent investment, right? You're handling that yourself. They give you a path in which you
Yes.
can handle it.
But what happens is that your Roth IRA, unlike if I invest, like if say I buy SpaceX and then the stock doubles in price and I sell it, and I have a retirement account, I got to pay taxes on it. But with a Roth IRA, that money you pay taxes up front on the income, and then the growth is tax exempt, and what you take out is tax exempt. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
So they'll take that away too eventually. Just wait.
Oh well, of course. But here's the thing: how they do it is they have what I call the fair share argument, the flawed fair share argument. They're like, oh, this is not fair. Why is he getting this benefit that you've earned, mind you, through the VA, or whether it's through your military retirement? It's not fair that now all of a sudden you've invested wisely, that you have all this money, you paid off your home, you have extra money to go on a vacation or whatever you want to do. Your independent journalism, you can fund all that. It's not fair that Colonel Chris Wyatt has all this extra money. So they'll say,
okay, wait a second. What extra money do I have? No,
no. I'm saying the money that you've earned through your retirement and all this stuff. They'll be able to take it away because it's not fair that you have it. It's a flawed fair share argument. I don't get it. Why does he get to benefit from that? So they'll figure out a way to take it away from you. It won't be an actual real argument, but it'll be a flawed fair share argument. Which is what I call it. So
well, let me just leave it at this. My garage is full of bales of feathers and buckets of tar. Okay.
All right.
Sounds like you're quite prepared. You're
I am
for the
prepared.
circumstance.
And that will be. That's unfair that you have that, right?
Oh no, it'll be unfair who gets to wear it.
You know what, Todd? You got a point. I don't have any tar and feathers in my garage. Chris owes me some tar and feathers.
That's right. It's not fair. It's not
I'm
fair.
really put out, Chris, that you haven't set forth your tar and feathers.
I have been hoarding the tar and feathers. That's true.
Right. It's not fair. Yeah.
Now I got to go 2 houses down and start plucking the chickens in the backyard of the lady's house.
Well, don't worry. We can pluck the politicians who we tar and feather. Then you'll get your feathers.
Oh, the pre-tarred and feathers. That way I don't need the tar. I just stick them back on.
Yeah.
So Ron, now where are we with Iran? I mean, I know we keep talking about this every week. So the needle gets moved a little bit. Looks like we're going to have, a ceasefire. There's going to be peace, and then the next thing you know, they're launching missiles again or drones or whatever. Last
time I heard, man, Trump's got every reason to go after Iran. But
we're going after. We're bombing him at this very minute where there's attacks taking place. No, it's on like Donkey Kong. They attacked an Apache unprovoked in international waters, in Oman's waters actually, and so it's on like Donkey Kong. We responded, and they attacked again. Trump said they get what they deserve. So I if he shows any restraint now, he's going to lose a lot of credibility. I mean, the bottom line is this: is that they have no interest in peace. They have no interest. They're bluster. If you don't want to be injured, then get out of our waters, dude. We're going to pound you into the freaking Middle Ages. Just get ready for it because it's coming. The arrogance of these clowns is just beyond comprehension. It is time to bomb them back into the Stone Age. The mullahs that run this country, they have no compunction. They murdered 30,000 Iranians who were peaceful demonstrators earlier this year. What they've done, their sponsors, their proxies in the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas are up to their same antics, attacking people, and then they keep drawing in the Lebanon issue, which has nothing to do with this conflict. Yet they try to do it. It is time to pummel them, and that's what we're doing. And I here's the other thing. There's a practical standpoint from a domestic situation. As I said all along, Trump ideally wants this done before the 4th of July. Otherwise, it's going to put a cloud over the 250th anniversary of America. And he definitely has to have it done before August 1st. Otherwise, it taints the fall elections. And that's all we're going to hear about is Iran. But the bottom line is this. The reason the Iranians are stringing this out is because they know that. And they're busy building a nuclear bomb.
Right.
So they'll put it on an ICBM and fly it so that a mid-range missile so that it hits Israel. It's just a matter of time. We need to go in there now and obliterate them. It's enough. Done. It's time to go.
Do you think Trump's strategy in this being passive was to give Iran, basically when being criticized, he can say, listen, I've given Iran fair chance. I even got Netanyahu to stop firing on them prior to this incident. And now he can pretty much say it's done. Now when he goes after him, he says, listen, I've gave him fair chance. People are begging for me to get it done, and now it's time to get it done. Do you think he was kind of like trying to show a good show of,
No, I think that Donald Trump had the same thing happen to him that George Bush had. He got the yips. All that George Bush and Colin Powell had to see was the footage of the highway of death, which wasn't a highway of death. Almost nobody got killed there. They took out the lead vehicle and the trail vehicles. The rest of them jumped out of their vehicles and drove off the side of the road, and then we obliterated the vehicles that were left on the road. And so their cowardice show, their political cowardice about how will people respond. We're being a bully, and they ended the Gulf War prematurely. And we allowed the Republican Guard to escape. That wasn't mauled by us, like the Telecom division, but the Hammurabi got away almost unscathed, and they went and oppressed and murdered tens of thousands, and the nonsense continued for years. I think Donald Trump got the yips. The press,
he
he
responded. Under
pressure. He caved under pressure. Well, this is looking bad. We need it to end. And he wanted to look like the good guy because, he said no more wars. He should have finished the damn job, and it should have been over by now. And maybe, quite frankly, maybe there's some truth to the story. We ran out of missiles. Maybe we're out of ATACMS. Maybe we're out of Patriot missiles for defense. I don't know. Maybe there's truth in that story that the press has been running. I don't know what to believe in the press anymore because they lie about everything. I mean, there was a Guardian article that, by the way, I made the Guardian in the UK, but the Guardian stole my breaking news story about refugees in Ohio unable to get driver's license because now they have to have like 40 hours of driver's training. And they have to pay hundreds of dollars to get a license. So I ran that story over a month ago. The Guardian caught wind of it, just ran a story in the Guardian, and then basically everything in the story was a lie. And they go up by saying, they're trying to imply things. Well, these refugees have been sent to Ohio, where Republicans have put these onerous burdens on. No, the Ohio legislature did that. It wasn't Republicans. And the Ohio, which for decades has suffered from population decline, that's an outright lie. Look up the census. Yeah. Every decade, Ohio has become larger. It's almost 12 million people in the state of Ohio. It's not growing as fast as it did 50 years ago, but there hasn't been a decade since the formation of the state of Ohio in 1803 that has seen a drop in population all the way up to now. And in fact, in this decade, last 5 years, every year it's been growth on growth. Every year there's been a larger population in Ohio. Look, he got the yips. That's the bottom line. He responded to the press. That's my view on it. Or we really were out of missiles and we needed a break to restock.
There was a concern when Biden was the president. He was giving most of our armaments to Ukraine and lowering our armaments, and we were getting kind of dangerously low. Then we were amping production as a result. So by the time Trump came in, we probably did have
right.
Yeah, that's an issue.
That's the problem. It's not like making bullets. I can go out and make crates of bullets overnight, but producing a Patriot missile takes a matter of weeks. It isn't done overnight.
Right.
And we do need to keep a certain. Whoa,
there you go.
We're having weird glitches. Yeah, we do need to keep a certain amount on supply, right? Just in case we can't just go running ourselves out and be undefended. So.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. This effort by the demonic industrial. It's funny because Eisenhower warned about the military-industrial complex. I worked in the military-industrial complex. I'm like, give me a break. Give me a break. I worked in it. It's not that big a portion of our economy. But what is really happening is to keep the European economies afloat. They are relying on the military-industrial complex. The German defense manufacturers, the Swedish defense manufacturers, the British defense, they are selling weapons, and the French, to Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And they're getting tens and hundreds of billions of dollars to keep their economies floating because otherwise they'd be in recession, quite frankly. And they are prolonging this war. They don't care how many Ukrainians or Russians are dead. It's all about their defense industry. And they all want to protect, like, this is democracy. Ukraine's not a democracy. It's a totalitarian fascist state with a veneer of democracy. It never has been a democracy. To call democracy is a joke. And to see these Europeans do this, that's what Biden was doing, is ridiculous. They have prolonged the suffering and the war there. It should have been over a long time ago. The Ukrainians, anyway, these people are making money off the war. That's why the war is continuing. That's why it will continue. It's not going to end. I remember
profiteering.
Yeah, John, we went to CPAC in 2022, and that's when this crap started. I arrived the night that the attack was launched by the Russians, and I got to my hotel room after getting that crappy Mustang swapped out for a proper car, and then driving to Hilton facility, and they didn't have the door machine working, so I had to find the guard who was sleeping. And the maintenance guy got his master key, let me in my room. I turned on my laptop, turned on the TV, and I started to run the shower, and then Russia invaded. I went live for an hour and 45 minutes, and people asked me, said, well, how long will this last? This is February 2022. I said 3 to 5 years minimum.
Right.
The video's there, the record's there. They're like, well, 3 to 5 years. I said, you don't understand the underlying circumstance here. And that's if no one else gets involved. But we've got the involvement of all these Europeans, and that's before Finland joined NATO. Can you believe that? Finland and Sweden joined NATO. Sweden I could see, but Finland is shocking. Anyway, so there's money to be made, and they're making money. And I think that Trump got the yips. He got the yips, just like George Bush did over the Highway of Death. Todd, you remember that, the Highway of Death. Powell and Bush got the yips, and we ended the thing prematurely.
Yeah, you're talking about the first Gulf War, Desert Storm.
Well, that was mine. I wasn't in the second one.
No. And I'm just saying for those people out there who don't remember the first Gulf War, the Highway of Death. Yeah, and of course we did stop short of going into Baghdad, and of course we allowed the elite Republican Guard to escape whenever we could have probably eliminated 70 to 80% of them, according to the documentaries I've seen.
Easily, we could have. We had them aggressive. Look, I'm not arguing we should have gone to Baghdad. That wasn't our mandate.
No.
But our mandate was to destroy the forces that were occupying Kuwait and prevent a threat. And we had the ability to do that. And we let them escape.
Right. Yeah. And that was the big problem there. And like you said, he got the yips. And of course, I think he harkened back, hey, we just won the Cold War. What happened in Vietnam? This is a good win for America and the world.
Mission accomplished.
Right. Mission accomplished. Let's come on home. Nothing wrong with it. But yeah, we left a problem in place that we were going to have to face at least a decade or so down the road. And of course, 2003, we invaded Iraq again anyway.
That's my issue with Iran right now. It's finish what you started.
Exactly.
If we're gonna follow through with it. Yes, get it done. Don't. And we've seen this problem before. People pull out of it, and then we got continuing problems. And it's exasperating because now they're more angry with us.
Right. They started this with us in the 70s. So.
Yeah, 1979, declare war on us. We're not. Look, I mean, you can't do the job half finished. I mean, you can pull out, but she's still pregnant. Oops, that was gross.
That was kind of wrong.
That was wrong. No, but the point is that Iran, you can't just leave. You can't just leave. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. If you leave, then they're just look. They're already declaring victory. I mean, they've been obliterated. And they're declaring victory. So here's the thing, and this is what kills me about the analysts on these fake news networks, the mainstream. Well, Iran clearly still has capability. Look at this; they could still strike. Yeah, when the campaign started, they were firing hundreds of missiles a night at Israel and at Bahrain and at Kuwait. Now they're firing 2 or 3 because they haven't got many, and they're shepherding them. Yes, they can still do damage, but that's the point. They can still do damage. Finish the job.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because like you said, they are building a bomb for sure, right? A nuke. And of course, what they're going to be able to do, they're going to be able to replace all the other missile and of course drone technology and improve upon it in the future. And the fact that we can shoot down a lot of their drones fairly easy now is going to be much harder in the future as their technology gets better as well.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Somebody in the chat on my program just said that's why I went from Desert Storm to Desert Shield. Actually, see, that's the thing about historians. We remember the events, especially if we experience them. It's not the way it went. Desert Shield was the first operation, deploying troops from the 82nd Airborne from the Ready Brigade as a speed bump to prevent him from invading Saudi Arabia. That's the start of Desert Shield. Desert Shield lasted until January, the 17th or 16th, whenever it was, depending where you're at. I was in theater, so I think it was the 17th already. And that's when it became Desert Storm. What happened after Desert Storm was known as Desert Calm, which almost nobody knows. There is only a small number of people, most people don't realize this, but those who wear the campaign ribbon for Desert Storm can have up to 3 stars. Most people just put 3 stars on their default because they don't know, and they're not even authorized 3 stars. 3 stars are for the 3 operations: Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and Desert Calm. You only get all 3 if you were present for all 3. And only about 20,000 of us were actually present for all 3. Only 20,000, because the 82nd guys were pulled out before Desert Calm started. And a lot of the other people were gone while we were still back there, cleaning up the mess. And then those who came after us got a campaign ribbon, but they only get Desert Calm. So most people should only be wearing 1 or 2 stars. Only a handful of people wearing all 3 stars. So I've got all 3 stars. But anyway, that's Desert Shield, Storm, and Calm. That's the operations in order.
Desert Calm. All right. That's the next documentary. In Desert Calm. Colonel Chris Wyatt.
Well, what's ironic is when I went to Arizona to the Intelligence Officer Basic Course in 1989, I bought a brand new Honda CRX. And I got polar white because it's a desert. Make sure.
Oh, lost the Colonel there.
Well, he didn't just freeze up. He popped back out on his own. I was reaching for it.
I haven't seen the power drop, so I don't know what's going on here. Was it just me that dropped off?
You dropped out and dropped back in.
That's the second time. So
yeah, you're talking about the new vehicle you bought, the white.
Yeah, so I bought this Honda, but I'm a little curious because usually the power flux. So we've had some thunderstorms here. So the Honda that I bought was treated, because the desert, the sand blowing, it kind of sandblasts your car, so they put a coat on it. And after I came back from the Gulf War, after Desert Shield, Desert Storm, I walked out to my car and I went to put something in the back, the hatchback, and I looked in that back window and a little sticker was there, and the coating that treated my car was called Desert Shield.
Oh, wow. That is funny.
That is ironic, isn't it? You know, that I bought it in 89, 1990. I was in Desert Shield, actually there. Oh my goodness, yeah.
I'm thinking a Honda CRX because you're a pretty tall guy. Did you drive with that you're like with your knees up into your chest? Or?
So the Civic, which was the same wheelbase, but for some reason the seats were mounted about an inch and a half further back in the CRX. It was just enough room for me to get in that CRX and drive it. But if it had been an inch closer, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I couldn't get in a Civic. My knees were literally jammed in my chest. It wasn't safe to drive. But with the CRX, I could do it. But since then, it's V8s and bigger.
Yeah. I remember that car. It was a small car.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was a big seller, and then they screwed it up and called it CRV or something like that. And
high fuel mileage. That's why.
But also it was a 4-cylinder engine with a lot of horsepower. It was really awesome for its size. It was 168 horsepower, something like that, for a little engine like that. And it was just fantastic. It was a great car. Took it all over Europe, traveled all over the place with it. It accelerated really fast. Of course, you're close to the ground, so it feels like you're going fast. But yeah, it had Desert Shield on it. So I was like, I knew that they sold it to me. I didn't pay attention. Then I went to the war. I came back. I'm getting in the car. I'm like, I already had Desert Shield. I didn't have to go to this damn war.
Right. Yeah, Desert Shield. Very cool. Yeah. So
anyway.
How long were you over there in total, start to finish?
Well, not that long, actually. I mean, I went there in December and I came back basically about in June, so 6 months. But I went on the advance party for 3rd Battalion, 8th Cavalry, and went in December and went over to Cement City, and every night was woken up by a rat the size of a raccoon who came into our tent. I tried to catch him and kill him, but I couldn't do it. He was clever. The first time I knew he was there, I was lying on my cot, and I woke up and I'm looking, and there's a rat sitting there staring at me, going, with his whiskers twitching. I'm like, what the heck? He's the size of a raccoon or a small house cat. Anyway, wow. But so Cement City. Then I went out to King Khalid Military City and built our forward base out there, forward operating base. It's there until the war kicked off, and then we went across the border, and we fought the 10th Infantry Division from the Iraqis, the 52nd Infantry Division. We eventually ran into the Talwakana Republican Guards Division, whom we shellacked. That's left some indelible moments in my memory that, some things in life you forget, but some things you don't. I remember our air liaison officer was there because they got to wear the cool desert camouflage. We were wearing our green uniforms still because we didn't get any desert camouflage. And they're calling in their 2 F-16s doing close air support. And they're flying around, and the ALO is like, no, we're good. The situation under control. The battalion commander says we don't need the air. And then the pilots, I can hear him on his radio. Yeah, no, you do need this. Basically, they had ordnance they had to drop. They want to drop it. So we had these 2 F-16s fly. They did a frontline trace, and the ALO's like, that's over our troops. so they flew again, and their frontline trace over the Talwakani units. In the meantime, all these soldiers were surrendering. They're coming up with their hands up like this, and we're bringing them in, a couple hundred of them. And then just as they reach our lines, the planes drop their ordnance. You can see the bomblets, like DPCIM just drop it, like the little bomblets dropping out like this. And as I watched it fall out of the sky, it's like in slow motion, and it hit the main part of their battalion. And it's like, it's like watching footage of Vietnam. And I'm just watching this. And I looked over at the guys who were surrendering, and they all looked back and are like, because if they had surrendered a few minutes before, that would have been them out there.
Right.
But moments like that stick with you forever. It's just, So I was up there, and then we went up to all the way up to the highway to Basra, and we were told to stop. And from there, actually, when the war stopped itself, we were in the Wadi al-Batin that night, but then we went up to rotate and patrol, and we had to listen. We weren't allowed to go to that certain point, and the Iraqis had their checkpoint, and they would pull people out of cars. They would sexually assault, rape, and murder women. They robbed people. We heard them executing people up there, and we couldn't do anything about it. We weren't allowed to go up there. It was really, if you're going to get post-traumatic stress disorder, that would have been the thing that did it. I could hear it all night long for several nights, but I wasn't next to it. If I'd been watching it in person, it might have been a different story. It might have been difficult to handle. And then eventually, but in the midst of all this, I got to do some unique things. I was a Class A agent, which is the guy who carries the cash, for those who don't know that.
Yeah, right.
And then they have a field ordering officer, because the Army doesn't trust one person to do both things. So we have 2 officers. So I was a Class A agent. Because of that, I got to go to Dhahran Air Base before the war started on a couple trips to go down to buy things for the unit that we needed up there in the assembly area, but that we didn't have in military stock. And we went around and negotiated with the vendors, buying crap, and I saw how the Saudis behave and what they're up to, and learned an awful lot about them. But the trailing story there is when the war started a few days after the bombing campaign started with the air campaign, we went down to to Nahran Air Base, and I stayed in the quarters that belonged to Major General Don Kaufman, who was the commander of the United States military training mission to Saudi Arabia, wsmn, the first Air Force officer ever court-martialed, by the way. Anyway, that came later. But his son was in my unit, and we went there, and we stayed in his quarters. I didn't know that at the time. And they had satellite TV, and I could make a phone call with a satellite phone, all that stuff. And anyway, I had a bed to sleep on, but I just was in the habit now of sleeping in my sleeping bag, so I slept on the floor. And during the night, the air raid sirens went off. And then I got up, I grabbed my Kevlar, put my uniform back on, got ready to run out and do something, and got my 9mm, and then, or it was a 45, wasn't 9mm, then I still had a 45. And then all of a sudden I heard a loud explosion. And after the explosion ended, I looked outside, and a Scud missile landed about 100 yards from where I was sleeping.
Wow.
And it had been hit by a Patriot, or at least exploded in the vicinity, and it didn't. So it hit the ground without exploding. And then later, in the Iraq War, I used to go to Riyadh quite a bit, and I stayed in the building where all the planners were staying at. And I went to the officers' club and had breakfast with all these people who were executing the war. We were having Belgian waffles in the midst of a war. I'll never forget that. Here I am. There's a war on. Pilots are flying, and people are dying, and I'm in Riyadh in an officers' club, eating Belgian waffles. I'll never forget that. So anyway, yeah, it's some of the indelible moments. But yeah, so I was there for about 6 months on that particular campaign. Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, very cool. Very cool. So assessment on the Ukraine, we brought that up. We talked about that. I always like to bring it up whenever I have the lead, just to kind of see where we're at. You talked about, we went to CPAC 02, by that early morning, you were on the air an hour and a half assessing, et cetera. You said 3 to 4 or 5 years, whatever. Where are we right now? What's the deal? Is this just going to be one of those things that Putin has to die before somebody can bring the troops out of there?
Well, the Russians aren't giving up. Either it's going to have to be a coup and remove Putin, and then
that's
war
what I'm
ends.
saying.
Yeah. Or Zelensky's going to have to go. He's going to have to be overthrown by his government, and then the Ukrainians capitulate. But as it is, there are plenty of Russians and Ukrainians that the Europeans are willing to let die on the altar of their greed. And their lies to the public about how this is so important. But it isn't. I mean, Russia invaded 4 years ago. Plus, has democracy ended in Europe? No. Is it under threat? No. Has Russia invaded other neighbors? No. Does it have the strength to do so? No. I think the Finns could defeat them at this point. I mean, if they invaded Finland, they'd probably get the shock of their lives. It'd be like 1939 all over again. You don't need the coldest winter in a century to make the Russians suffer. No, it's I don't know how this thing ends, but I was correct. I said 3 to 5 years minimum. We're now in the 4th year, and we're going to make it to the 5th year before this thing ends. And people don't understand the underlying problems here. Russia and Ukraine have very tortuous, conflated, confusing history between who's Ukrainian, who's a Russian. And there are lots of ethnic Russians living in the territory of what became Ukraine. And the Russians not happy about that, And when Barack Hussein Obama did nothing about the annexation of Crimea, the handwriting was on the wall. It was just a matter of time before this happened. And because we have the dumbest moron occupying the presidency in living history in the form of Joe Biden, look, if you look back, this was predictable. And actually, I did predict this back when Biden took over. 9 days after he took over, the military in Myanmar overthrew the elected government and put the president in prison, where she still remains to this day, on Aung San Suu Kyi. That's already, now we're talking, 5-6 years she's been in prison. And a military dictatorship took over. The response to the Biden regime was silence. They said nothing about it. I mean, I thought they were Democrats. I thought they believed in the rule of law, but they said virtually nothing, did nothing. They didn't sanction, they didn't punish them in any significant way. And then just 6 weeks after he became president, the Russians moved 70,000 troops into Belarus along the border with Ukraine. And I'm like, hey, over here, this is not just a regular exercise. And then they sat there all spring and summer. You don't go spend 6 months on an exercise. That's a deployment. And they were deploying to attack Ukraine. And he said nothing. It wasn't until after the elections in November that he started running his mouth that Russia's going to invade. And then they actually began disclosing classified information saying that Russia's going to invade this time, which they never should have done. And in fact, it did occur because Putin made the following calculation. Look, he's a wild card. That guy's crazy. I don't know what he's going to do. I can't risk it. But this is the dumbest SOB that's ever been in the White House. And he won't react. If I'm going to attack Ukraine, now's the time. I got to do it now. And they did. But the problem with the Russians is that their strategic, their operational campaign was idiotic, and it was just poorly conceived. They attacked on 7 fronts simultaneously. They divided their forces, instead of having overwhelming ratio. What they should have done is attack from two locations and had a holding position. In the north, they should have held, or they should have put all their effort in to go capture Kiev if they thought the country was going to capitulate, if that was there. But they didn't. Instead, they went piecemeal. And they should have just went to the Donbass, came pouring through the Donbass in overwhelming numbers, and from down below in the Crimea in a pincer movement. And that in two areas. And that would concentrate all their forces there. And the other places, just hold troops there so that Ukrainians couldn't attack them and come into Russia. And then they would have captured everything east of the Dnieper River within a matter of weeks. And this war would have been over. But instead, they attack Lvov, which is a Polish city, now part of Ukraine, all the way in the west. They're attacking all over. They're attacking this island. They're attacking here. They're attacking everywhere. And they're dividing their forces instead of having an overwhelming, you have to normally have a 3-to-1 ratio when you're attacking. And they got to the position where they didn't have this. Someplace they had a 1-to-1 ratio, which is stupid. And also, instead of coming with their frontline troops, they underestimated Ukraine and underestimated the gullibility of Europeans to support this crook, Volodymyr Zelensky. And so they sent their T-72s and T-80s instead of their T-90s and their new equipment. And by the time they started employing that stuff, drones were part of the conflict, and they were destroying this advanced armor. None of that stuff was there initially. If they'd come across defeated Ukrainians, we would be in this situation today. The eastern third of and I'm not advocating for this, but I'm just telling you how it would have went. The eastern third of Ukraine would have been annexed along with the Crimea and would be part of Russia proper. The rump state of Ukraine would survive today, with Kiev being essentially on the border. And that's what we'd have today. The war would be over. But nope. We've got two antagonistic fools, Putin and Zelensky, and all the useful idiots leading countries in Europe that are fueling and funding this war. And it's not going to end anytime soon. And it's really tragic and sad. People don't know the horrors that go on there. They just don't know, despite the propaganda trying to tell them what's going on. It's frustrating.
So you basically described Putin's arrogance by undermining his opponent, thinking that he was weak and he was going to do a bunch of preemptive strikes, and left himself weak and vulnerable, and it backfired on him.
Well, Ukraine was weak until the French gave them artillery, and we gave them Patriot missiles and Hawk defense systems, and then we gave them ATACMS. That's insane. And then of course, they were giving them jet fighters. What is going on here? But you know what's going on here? The Germans and the French are clearing out their inventories of old 40-year military hardware and restocking with brand new stuff.
Sure.
That's what's going on here.
Yeah. If you want to get rid of it, that's how you do it, right? Get rid of the old.
And also, it's a test bed. We look at this. Look at the Ukraine has been the conflict for the test bed for drones, for UAVs. That's been the test bed for it. If you go back,
that's been a strength for them.
If you go back to the Yom Kippur War, the Yom Kippur War was a test bed for Soviet air defense artillery. The Soviets took down so many of the Israeli jets and helped them gain air parity for a while because they were so effective. And that was when the SA-2s and all these other systems were tested by the Soviets because they weren't being tested in conflict. That was back in 73. And then when the Soviets went into Afghanistan in 79, all their air defense systems were well tested. Not that the Afghans posed any threat, but I'm just saying they were well tested. So look, war is a crucible. It's a proving ground for military hardware and for techniques and operational methods. And sadly, that's what's been happening. The Chinese are watching, we're watching, and we're learning. The Chinese are learning what's happening in Russia, and others are watching what's happening in Iran, and they're learning from that. And it makes it more challenging. Look what just happened for the Apache pilots. We rescued them with an autonomous boat. Now we got boats flying around in the water, just driving themselves.
Right.
Is Skynet already taken over in the Gulf of or the Straits of Hormuz?
You mentioned earlier about social credit scoring, and I'm thinking I'm already a truck driver. And when your social credit score goes, where do you go? You go to the lowest paying field, right? What am I going to have to do now? Become a security guard or something if my social credit score collapses? Or am I just on the outs? Because they're bringing autonomous into trucking. There was just, what company was it now is going to start running more trucks? I can't remember which one.
Well, John, we unfortunately, you won't become a security guard because we'll have robots to do that job.
Right.
So
See, that's what I'm saying. I'm basically on Skid Row, bro. I'm as low as I can go now.
Well, you should have become a trans advocate. Then you'd be okay.
Well, I guess
you could have millions
down
of dollars
there
right
in,
now.
Boston, Massachusetts are having their what they call it, trans period pride celebrations.
Oh, good Lord. Spare me.
They're looking for equity for all who menstruate.
Spare me. Pregnant people. Hey, John and Todd, the rough plan right now is the 24th, which is 2 weeks from tonight. I expect to be in Nashua, New Hampshire in the studio with John.
Is that right? Holy cow. I did not know that.
That's my lead that night, but I might have to pass it over to Chris if he's going to be in the
I
studio.
will be getting ready to go down to Murfreesboro for our department convention for the American Legion.
Well, don't be trying to pass this off of me. I'll be looking out the window at all the chicas walking by on the streets
then
of Nashua.
I'll lead, and Chris will be sitting there with actually, there's a pair of binoculars right there, George.
See, I can see them hanging from the window. I saw them hanging from the window. That's why. If things go well, because this coming Friday in 2 days, I'm flying to Atlanta to meet with refugees and do interviews, doing a documentary. Atlanta, Decatur, then Greenville, South Carolina, back down to Atlanta and Monroe, and then back up here. I'll be back next Tuesday in time for a show on Wednesday. But the following week, I intend to leave on the 21st, driving or flying up to New England, going to New Hampshire, and going to Massachusetts and Connecticut, even though I don't like Connecticut or Massachusetts, to meet with refugees. So that's the plan. And I'll be gone for pretty much the week, and I'm going to time it so that I leave on Sunday if I drive, and then I'm up in Nashua on the 24th. That's the plan.
Awesome. Nice. That'll be awesome to have you here, man. Well, we got a seat right there for you.
All right.
Because it's like, what are you talking about? I'm moving you out from behind that board.
It's off camera. I can pick my teeth.
I'll pick out. There'll be a camera on you.
Oh, okay.
Right.
All right.
And I got the email from George Russell today. Looks like we'll continue for another year on the air, right? I think we decided.
We didn't get canceled. That's good news.
That's right. Good news. We're good to go. Another year.
Of course, to be fair,
trying, but not
of course, but the Federal Communications Commission hasn't quite heard tonight's broadcast, so we can still get canceled.
Right.
We try to push the limits, but
yeah. I think we'll be good. I think those will get under the radar, so not a big deal.
Yeah.
Nothing was said tonight that would be, there might be a couple little words, but nothing that was really that bad. I've heard worse on different shows, other shows. I've heard that or more. So,
well, I've heard worse than that clown from New York. Who needs a haircut.
Who, Mamdani?
No, not him. The shock jock. Howard Stern.
Mr.
Howard
Stern.
Back in the day.
First him on the air, on over the airwaves, driving in the tri-state area up there, listening to him. He was on the radio years ago.
There's some things I've heard him say on the radio that I'm like, wow, you're not really supposed to get into sexually explicit material, and he's over there giving play-by-play definitions or explanations of what's going on. It's like, wow.
Just a sicko guy.
The way it basically works, from my understanding, is if there's a bunch of listeners out there go, hey, I heard a bad word, I got to call the FCC. That's basically, they just narc you out or something. But if the FCC's not getting a phone call, then what are they going to know? They're not listening.
I think if you did it on a regular, this was your normal program,
it becomes a recurring thing.
Yeah.
No, what's odd about this is, this has all changed so much from when I first went in radio back in the 80s. Back then in the 80s, you had to get a license, to broadcast in the air. You had to apply for a license, be a broadcaster. Now it's just anybody can get behind the microphone. Look at this.
Right?
Yeah. Wow.
I don't have a license.
Anybody. There's a lot to be said for how things changed and stuff. I wonder if the internet didn't influence that a little bit, because some things loosened up a lot. I think a lot of things loosened up a lot through the years and stuff. You're right. Back in the 1980s, rated R movies were really rated R movies, and now today they're more like PG. People put out PG that's about rated R back in 1979, 1980.
Oh, right. All the innuendos and everything that's in any movie.
No doubt about that.
And it's right in your face too.
So we're running short on time, and I did want to talk about the FIFA World Cup, because by the time we meet, it will be underway. It starts tomorrow in Mexico City, where South Africa takes on Mexico. And I've already predicted, not that I like soccer, but Mexico win 2-1 or 2-0. That goes. This World Cup has gotten a lot of grief, mostly because the tickets are a joke. I went in for last-minute ticket sales. Then you had to wait 11 minutes to get into it. I got into it earlier today. And then I went for the games. I looked for Philadelphia. Said limited availability. I clicked on it. There were no tickets. That's not limited availability. That's no availability. Then I clicked on another game, like in Atlanta. The cheapest ticket was $2,500. Seriously? And I clicked on this. The whole thing is a joke. So the prices are outrageous. This is not a World Cup for the masses. It's for the wealthy. That's the first problem with this. The second problem with this is that we've got all these visa requirements that are making it difficult for some people to get over here. Understandable, but it's still difficult to deal with. And the third part, quite frankly, is that now the administration is taking a lot of grief because they're banning people from entering the country. And we have people that don't understand how borders work. And they're like, well, yeah, but the Somali guy had a visa. Yeah, it was issued in Kenya by a consular officer. Their job is to make sure there's no threats to America. They thought there wasn't. When the guy showed up at the immigration in Miami, he answered questions in a dodgy fashion. The Customs and Border Patrol agent had the right to refuse entry. They interviewed him for 11 hours. They were dissatisfied with his responses. They had derogatory information on him, which the consular officer didn't have in Kenya. And therefore, they sent him back to Istanbul on a plane. And people are like calling it racism. Not racism. The guy's tied to a terrorist organization. Get over it. We don't have no responsibility to let people in this country who are tied to terrorist organizations. Mm-hmm. He's tied up with Al-Shabaab, and he shouldn't be here. Simple as that.
But Colonel, hold on. I'm not here to do terrorist activities. I'm here to just watch a soccer game. So I get a pass, don't I?
Well, I'm not here to commit terrorist acts. I just want to learn how to fly a plane, but not land it.
What's that soccer ball you want to bring in with you there, Todd?
9/11, everybody.
But, that's basically what they mean by the General Welfare Clause, right? To protect the nation. It wasn't about, everybody gets welfare, or we're going to make sure everybody gets fed. Or it wasn't for the individual. It was about protecting the nation. And that's why we have vetting processes when it comes to immigration or visiting the country.
Well, it's interesting because I've told a lot of the South Africans who are trying to come over here as refugees who come to my program and watch it. I said, you have to understand that the mission of the United States Customs Immigration Service, USCIS, is not the interviews they do for you in South Africa to facilitate you coming to America as a refugee. That's not their mission. That's a task. Their mission is to protect our borders and protect Americans. That's why there's medical screening. We can't let people with tuberculosis or infectious disease come into the country. That has to be taken care of. That's why you have immunizations. That's why you get medical screening. And their job is to root out people who are a potential threat to this country and protect American citizens first and foremost, something the Biden administration neglected this entire time. Not only did they neglect it, they facilitated the criminal invasion of our country. So USCIS is here to defend us. Customs and Border Patrol are here to protect America. Do they make mistakes? Yes, they do occasionally. But by and large, they do a great job defending this country, especially now that Biden's not in office. So people need to understand that if you want to be a refugee, the mission of the people isn't to get you over here. It's to stop you from coming over here if there's a reason to stop you. But if not, then you come over here. But I think that a lot of people get lost on that. And the final arbiter about whether you enter the country isn't a consular officer in Beijing or Guangzhou or in Stockholm. It's the Customs and Border Patrol agent at the port of entry who makes that decision. Right or wrong, that's how it is. And I accept that. Because the same thing could happen to me going to the UK or going to South Africa or going to Mali. They can reject me at the border and I have no say over it, well, even if I have a visa.
Now, isn't there some sort of concern about some law that was passed in the 1990s that if they claim asylum, then they get due process? So then they get to see a judge and things like that.
Well, if you follow the legal process for asylum, but the problem is that most people are not following the legal process for asylum. They're frauds. They're not real. They're entering the country under false premises if you come here on a legitimate premise and then you make an asylum claim. But the asylum program is set up so that, Mikhail Baryshnikov is a good example. You come here on legitimate purposes, part of the Bolshoi Ballet to perform in America, and because of threats to you back home, once you're in the country, then you file for asylum. That's legit. But because you're an economic migrant, you slide into America illegally and then claim asylum. That's not legit. That's not legit. That's a crime.
Right.
You should be deported immediately and never get a hearing and be banned from the country.
In addition to that, what some people don't understand is that first offense is a misdemeanor, but that second offense is a felony.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, anytime someone violates my sovereignty is a felony. That's my take on it.
Yeah,
I'm not inclined to argue with you about that. I was just stating, as far as I understand.
No, you're correct legally, but
law,
but you know what? Who cares about the law? I mean, you can be what you want to be. We just, whatever you want to be in this country these days. So, I guess we just decide what we want to do. I mean, look, we just have a jungle primary and just, magically find ballots and boxes, hidden under the cases there, and look at, it's just.
Yeah. So that L.A. I mean, nothing. Is anybody on the left going to stand up and say, "Hey, this was stolen"?
No.
This was. I mean, come on.
Whether it's stolen or not, the election has zero credibility. 60% of the vote is in, then they magically stop counting. Spencer Pratt is a 35,000 vote lead with a small number of votes in it, 60%. Magically, he's now behind. That's ridiculous. Also, the same thing with Steve Hilton. Steve Hilton is leading by 140,000 votes with 58% of the vote in. And suddenly, it's 64% of the vote in, and he's trailing? So he got no votes? How does Becerra gain 130,000 votes to catch him and then pass him by now like 100 and some thousand votes? It's shades of Pennsylvania in 2020 all over again. When Donald Trump ended the night ahead 160,000 votes, only 1.2 million votes outstanding to be counted for the scam mail-in stuff, according to the the Secretary of State, Kelly Buford, 1.2 million votes had to be counted. And then days later, suddenly Trump's lead goes from 160,000 to a 60,000 deficit. That's 230,000 votes, complete swap. In order for that to happen, Biden has to get the vast majority of those votes. But given the fact that 38% of the people who requested mail-in ballots were Republicans, it seems highly implausible. It's the same thing. It's just nonsense. It's either an election or it's stolen. There's no credibility in California's elections. Jungle primary, the purpose of primary is for political parties to select their candidates, not for this nonsense. This is a theft of democracy, and anybody that doesn't see it in California is an idiot. And I'll tell them that to their face.
So Todd was talking about Graham Plattner last week. And did you see he picked up his victory in Maine and 70% of the votes?
Of course, because Democrats are evil and have no morality.
Yep,
did you see what he said about that soldier who was wounded? You know, who's also from Maine? All the nasty things. What he said about the American sniper too. This guy is, look, he won't win. Susan Collins is going to get Democrats voting for her now because he's just that crazy.
He's cuckoo crazy.
We all know how I feel about Susan Collins. I mean, some people need put out to the glue factory.
Alan Gale says he's looking to get Oklahoma to get to vote for Jackson Laymeyer. We had him on the show once. If you guys remember, the young pastor.
Yep.
Yeah,
all right.
He's running, and that'd be interesting. I'd like to see him win a seat.
Be interesting, yeah. So we've got about a minute left. Any final thoughts between now and next week's show, gentlemen? John,
just get involved with these primaries, man. Don't be afraid to vote. Don't be afraid to research your candidates and stuff. It's important. Unless you're on the left. If you're on the left, take a seat, take some time and relax. You work,
take a holiday.
Work too hard. But if you're on the right, yeah, man, take some action. We need you.
I think what John's trying to say is Democrats stay home.
Yeah, take some time off. You deserve it.
You've stolen enough elections in the last several years. Take a break.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, let's see what happens with the first week. We've got, I think, Paraguay or something like that on Friday night at 9:00 Eastern Standard Time in the World Cup. So if you suffer from narcolepsy, tune in 9:00 Friday night East Coast time, and I guarantee you'll be falling asleep before the game is over. It's soccer.
All right, folks. We'll see you next week, 7 to 9 Eastern, right here, WSMN 1590 AM and 95.3 FM. Till then, God bless. I need to go.